At 12 o'clock midnight, something impossible happens. The Earth stops spinning. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. For a fraction of a second, everything seems normal. Then the world begins to tear itself apart. At the equator, the ground beneath you is moving at nearly 1,000 miles per hour. The atmosphere is moving with it. The oceans are moving with it. Every city, every airplane, every tree, and every person is traveling through space at incredible speed without even realizing it. But the moment Earth stops, you don't. The ground suddenly comes to a halt while everything above it continues racing eastward. The atmosphere becomes a wall of destruction. The oceans surge across continents. Buildings collapse. And within minutes, some of the most powerful forces on Earth are unleashed. But surviving the first few minutes would only be the beginning. Because if Earth stopped spinning, day and night would no longer work the way you know them. One side of the planet would face the sun for an incredibly long time, while the other side would be trapped in darkness. Temperatures would become extreme. Oceans would move. Weather systems would be transformed. And the world we know today would disappear forever. So what exactly would happen if Earth suddenly stopped spinning? And more importantly, could humanity survive? Let's find out. The first second to understand what happens, we need to understand what is happening right now. You may feel completely still, but you're not. Earth is constantly rotating beneath you. At the equator, the surface is moving at roughly 1,000 miles per hour, or about 1,670 kilometers per hour. And you're moving with it. Your house is moving with it. The oceans are moving with it. The atmosphere is moving with it. Everything on Earth's surface is already carrying enormous momentum. That's why the sudden stop would be so devastating. Think about being inside a car traveling at highway speed. If the driver suddenly slams into a concrete wall, the car stops. But your body wants to keep moving forward. That's inertia. Now imagine that happening to an entire planet. If Earth somehow stopped rotating in a single instant, the ground would stop moving. But the atmosphere wouldn't instantly stop. Neither would the oceans. And neither would you. At the equator, you could effectively be thrown eastward at hundreds of meters per second. You wouldn't simply stumble. You'd be exposed to forces far beyond anything the human body could survive. And the atmosphere itself would become catastrophic. Air, moving at hundreds of meters per second, would behave less like a normal windstorm, and more like a planetary scale blast. Trees would be ripped apart. Structures would be destroyed. Vehicles could be thrown across the landscape, and enormous amounts of debris would be carried through the air. The first few minutes would be pure chaos. The oceans strike back, but there's something even larger than the atmosphere. The oceans. Earth's oceans have also been rotating with the planet. If the ground suddenly stopped, the water would continue moving. Massive amounts of water could rush across coastlines. Cities near the ocean would face catastrophic flooding. Low-lying regions could disappear beneath enormous waves, and the effects wouldn't remain confined to a single coastline. Water would continue moving across the planet as Earth's rotation disappeared. The shape of Earth's oceans would gradually begin to change. And this brings us to one of the strangest consequences of a non-rotating Earth. The planet itself would eventually reshape its water distribution. Earth is not a perfect sphere. Its rotation causes a slight bulge around the equator. Without rotation, that rotational bulge would eventually disappear. Over extremely long periods, gravity would redistribute Earth's oceans. Water would migrate toward the polar regions. The equatorial regions could become much drier, and new enormous bodies of water could form closer to the poles. The map of the planet would slowly become almost unrecognizable. The end of the 24-hour day now comes another massive change. Day and night. Right now, Earth rotates once approximately every 24 hours. That rotation gives us our familiar cycle of sunrise and sunset. But if Earth stopped rotating, the normal day-night cycle would disappear. Earth would still orbit the sun, but the same side of the planet would remain, facing the sun for a very long period. And the opposite side would remain in darkness. The result would be a world divided between extreme light and extreme darkness. The sunlit side would receive prolonged heating. Temperatures could climb dramatically. Water would evaporate more rapidly. Some regions could become brutally hot. On the dark side, temperatures would fall. The surface would lose heat continuously. Water could freeze across enormous regions. And between these two extremes would be a strange transition zone, a region where the sun could remain near the horizon. Imagine living somewhere where sunrise never fully happens and sunset never completely arrives. A world locked in permanent twilight. This region might eventually become one of the more habitable parts of the planet. But even there, survival wouldn't be easy. What happens to the atmosphere? Earth's rotation plays a major role in atmospheric circulation. It helps create the Coriolis effect, which influences the direction of large-scale winds and storms. If Earth stopped rotating, that effect would disappear. The weather patterns we're familiar with would be radically transformed. Jet streams would change. Ocean currents would reorganize. Storm systems would behave differently. The global circulation of heat would be disrupted. And the climate system would begin moving toward a completely different state. The atmosphere would still move because of temperature differences between the hot and cold sides of the planet, but it wouldn't behave like today's atmosphere. Instead of the familiar global weather patterns, we'd have an entirely new planetary climate system, and that could be devastating for life. What happens to plants? Plants depend on sunlight, but they also depend on predictable temperatures, water, and atmospheric conditions. A sudden change to Earth's environment would place enormous stress on ecosystems. Plants on the permanently illuminated side could suffer from excessive heat and water loss. Plants on the dark side would face extreme cold and a lack of sunlight. Photosynthesis would become extremely difficult in many regions. As plants disappeared from ecosystems, herbivores would lose their primary food source. Then predators would lose theirs. Food chains would begin collapsing, and humans would feel the consequences quickly. Agriculture would become one of our biggest problems. Traditional farms depend on regular sunlight and predictable seasons. A non-rotating Earth would destroy that stability. Humanity would need artificial lighting, controlled environments, underground agriculture, or other advanced technologies to produce food. In other words, survival would become an engineering problem. Would the magnetic field disappear? This is where science gets interesting. You might think Earth's magnetic field would instantly disappear because Earth stops spinning. But that's not exactly how it works. Earth's magnetic field is primarily generated by movements of electrically conducting material inside the planet's liquid outer core. The surface rotation of Earth and the generation of the magnetic field are related through Earth's overall internal dynamics. But stopping the surface rotation would not instantly switch off the magnetic field. So we wouldn't suddenly lose our magnetic shield in the first few seconds. However, if Earth's internal dynamics were somehow altered over extremely long periods, the magnetic field could potentially change. And that matters because Earth's magnetic field helps protect our atmosphere and life from charged particles coming from the sun. Without it, the planet would face a much harsher radiation environment. But that would be a long-term concern. The immediate disaster would be much simpler. Physics. What happens to the moon? The moon would still orbit Earth. Earth's rotation stopping wouldn't make the moon suddenly crash into us. But the relationship between Earth, the moon, and the oceans would change dramatically. Today, Earth's rotation and the moon's gravitational pull work together to produce the tides we experience. Without Earth's rotation, the tidal system would behave very differently. Ocean water would gradually reorganize under the moon's gravitational influence. Coastal environments would change. Marine ecosystems would be disrupted, and the oceans would become part of an entirely new planetary system. The moon itself would continue moving around Earth, but Earth would no longer behave like the rotating planet we've known throughout human history. What about gravity? Here's another misconception. If Earth stopped spinning, you would not suddenly float into space. Earth's gravity would still hold you to the ground. In fact, gravity would become slightly stronger at the equator, because the outward effect associated with Earth's rotation would disappear. You wouldn't feel dramatically heavier, but the difference would be measurable, and as the planet slowly changed shape, the distribution of gravity across Earth's surface would also change. So no, Earth stopping doesn't mean everyone gets launched into space. The real problem is almost the opposite. You'd still be stuck on Earth while the planet around you becomes nearly unrecognizable. Could humans survive? Now we reach the biggest question. Could humanity survive? If Earth stopped instantly, the answer would be extremely grim. The initial winds, debris, ocean movement, and destruction would kill enormous numbers of people. Modern infrastructure would be devastated. Power grids would fail. Transportation systems would collapse. Cities near coastlines could be destroyed. Food supplies would be disrupted, and the global economy would effectively cease to function. But let's imagine that some people survive. What would they do? Humanity would probably move toward regions with the most manageable conditions. The permanent twilight zone could become extremely valuable. People might build underground cities. Massive climate-controlled habitats could protect humans from extreme temperatures. Artificial lighting could replace sunlight for agriculture. Nuclear, geothermal, solar, and other energy sources could become essential. Food could be grown inside controlled environments. Water could be recycled repeatedly. And advanced technology might allow humans to survive in a world that naturally no longer supports us. But this would require enormous resources. Billions of people couldn't simply move underground overnight. So even with advanced technology, civilization would face an extraordinary challenge. But what if Earth slowed down instead? This changes everything. If Earth gradually slowed over millions of years, humanity wouldn't experience an instant catastrophe. There would be time to adapt. Scientists could predict the changing climate. Cities could be relocated. Agriculture could move toward suitable regions. Energy systems could be redesigned. Humans could build artificial ecosystems. And future civilizations might become almost completely independent from the natural environment. A slowly rotating or non-rotating Earth could still support life. It just wouldn't look anything like today's Earth. So the real nightmare isn't Earth eventually stopping. It's Earth stopping right now. The final moments, think about what Earth is doing at this exact moment. You are sitting or standing on a planet spinning through space at incredible speed. Above you, the atmosphere is moving with the planet. Below you, the entire crust is rotating. The oceans are rotating. The moon is orbiting Earth, and Earth is orbiting the sun. Millions of things are happening simultaneously, yet you feel absolutely nothing. That's because you're part of the system. But if Earth's rotation suddenly disappeared, that invisible motion would become impossible to ignore. The atmosphere would become destructive. The oceans would surge. Cities would collapse. Climate systems would transform. And humanity would be forced to survive on a planet that no longer behaves like the Earth we know. The strange thing is, Earth doesn't need to stop spinning for us to realize how important its rotation is. Every sunrise reminds us. Every sunset reminds us. Every ocean current, every weather system, every 24-hour day, all of them are connected to a planet that's constantly moving. And perhaps that's the most incredible part. We live on a world traveling through space at enormous speeds, while somehow feeling perfectly still. So the next time you look at the horizon and watch the sun disappear, remember, the Earth isn't standing still, it's spinning. And if that spinning ever stopped suddenly, our world would change forever. If you enjoyed this journey into one of Earth's most terrifying possibilities, subscribe to Future and Facts Hub for more mind-blowing science, impossible scenarios, and questions that could change the way you see our planet. Because sometimes the most terrifying question isn't, what is out there? It's simply, what if the world beneath our feet suddenly stopped?